the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting tonight from Mogadishu, Somalia. Good evening. It is just past 5 a.m. in the morning here in Somalia. And under a full moon, look at this moon over Mogadishu, an invasion moon. The military always prefers to come in, particularly with an amphibious landing, under full moon. They did so in the early morning darkness here today. This has been the sequence of events. Let me bring you right up to date. Helicopters are now coming in. First, the Navy SEALs came in. Then the Marine reconnaissance scoped out the beach, set up beacon lights. That was followed by Marine amphibious craft, the hovercraft and other amphibious vessels coming right up to the beach. Textbook, by the book, amphibious assault on the beach, which is right beside the runway of Mogadishu Airport. The Marines quickly moved their armored personnel carriers to secure the runway itself. Then they popped outside the terminal and took the checkpoint outside the airport terminal. They disarmed some Somalis at the time, and 3 Somalis were arrested. We know not why. Possibly they resisted being disarmed. We don't know details on that. Now, at the moment, what's happening at the airport, keep in mind there are 2 main goals in the initial assault here. One is to secure the airport. We're told by Marine sources that now has been done. They feel they can handle anything at the airport. At the seaport, about 1.5 miles up from us, up the beach up from us, a little murkier situation developing there. The seaport is where a lot of food has been, in effect, held hostage. The 2 main warlords who control a lot of people in and around Mogadishu are said to control the seaport, and they said that there wouldn't be any trouble at the seaport. Now, gunshots were heard, but when we first reported the gunshots, we said, you know, you hear a lot of gunshots around the city. They weren't necessarily in opposition to Marines, but the latest on that, let's go to David Martin at the Pentagon. David, what's the story?
Well, Dan, the Marines reported hearing those same gunshots, but they said they weren't from them. The Marines weren't firing on anybody, and as far as they knew, they weren't being fired on by anybody. So the conclusion you would have to draw from that is that these gunshots were simply somebody in the port letting off a volley into the air, probably as a last signal of defiance before they had to relinquish the port to the Marines. At the airport, as you said, all is going smoothly. In fact, U.S. officials say the operation right now is on schedule and going very smoothly. That airport is the linchpin of the operation, and the Marines' first job, once they get it secured, will be to get it ready to handle a steady stream of military transports.
The first transport plane is now scheduled to land in Mogadishu around noon local time Wednesday, carrying the personnel and equipment needed to turn that airfield into a 24-hour-a-day air cargo terminal. Right now, it operates only in daylight and can handle only 2 transport aircraft at a time. But airplanes alone can never bring in all the equipment that will be needed. Most of it will have to come by ship. The first to dock at the port will be the Loomis, loaded with electrical generators, water purification units, trucks, and fuel to support the Marines ashore. 3 more cargo ships are waiting off the Somali coast, but the port is only big enough to handle 1 at a time. By Thursday, the first combat troops from the U.S., Marines from Camp Pendleton, should start arriving in Mogadishu and begin moving out into the interior of the country. First to Baidoa, a hellhole of starvation and gun battles between rival clans.
It will probably be next week at the earliest before relief agencies are able to begin delivering significant volumes of food to the starving. Dan?
Thank you, David. American officials have stressed over and over again that this is a humanitarian mission with the primary aim, feeding the hungry. But that is not all that it is. Reality check. The Americans' first task of necessity must be to establish at least a minimum level of law and order in a place that would make the old Wild West look tame. Alan Dizzy has a report on the route of the gun in Mogadishu.
They're known as technicals, jeeps and pickups with everything from machine guns to anti-tank and even anti-aircraft weapons mounted on them. The young men who cruise on technicals are the unpredictable element confronting the Marines. One wrong move on either side could turn a humanitarian mission into a firefight. Guns are everywhere here. Warlords own arsenals. Merchants have mini militias. Even car rentals include gunmen. Somalia may not have a constitution, but as far as guns are concerned, it doesn't need one. The right to bear arms is considered a birthright, and not one Americans are likely to understand.
For a long time, Somalis had guns, and how the perception is quite different, because the two Somalis can argue for 15 minutes pointing gun at each other and not shooting at each other.
The merchants of the arms bazaar have done well here, and they don't like the idea of Marines spoiling their business. When someone spotted this picture being taken, the cameraman had a gun put to his head. He was saved by our guard, who threatened to shoot back. Technicals working for humanitarian agencies are being kept off the streets for the first 48 hours after the Marines land in an effort to prevent misunderstandings. A major problem is that the young men who ride the technical don't have any other way to make a living, and they need the money to support a drug habit that by late afternoon leaves them dangerous and unpredictable. It's called CAT. It's been part of the social fabric here for years, but the war has turned teenagers into chronic CAT abusers. If a kid high on CAT is killed by a nervous Marine, there is a distinct danger that the incident could spark a vendetta by the youngster's clan, with every foreigner considered a legitimate target. And no one should forget that clan warfare is what brought this country to the point where Marines are needed to save it from itself. Alan Pizzi, CBS News, Mogadishu.
The major Marine contingent coming into Somalia comes from Camp Pendleton, California. Bill Lagatuda is there.
Reporting card says here.
Flying off to a staging area so they can be among the first troops in, this medical team, their job, keep the invading force on its feet.
The disease threat in Somalia is probably more, or as significant or more significant than any disease threat that the U.S. forces have faced on a major scale.
Which is why on this mission, bringing the right medicine seems more urgent than bringing the right weapons. These Marines have been told to be as prepared for gun-toting teenagers as they are for disease-carrying mosquitoes.
I'd be more concerned about catching a virus or, getting something out, flies and stuff over there, than would be the guys with the guns,
The heat, standing water, lack of facilities have the troops worried about malaria, hepatitis, yellow fever.
What's the one thing that they want you to wear?
These Marines were being taught, wear gloves when you take a prisoner. Touching the locals can be hazardous. How the sights and sounds of Somalia will touch the men is also a major concern. Those who've been there, among the dead and dying, say the psychological stress can be worse than the physical.
Well, I remember when we got done for the day, I just went into my room, I just sat there and just stared at the wall. And I thought, thank God my kids don't have to go through this.
I don't believe any one person could be totally mentally prepared for this kind of operation. We're going to be seeing millions of people starving right in front of our eyes. I can handle the grown-ups, but the children, that's I have 2 kids of my own. I don't really care to see the kids.
Those who've experienced the horrors of Somalia say being that close to death on such a great scale is something no amount of training can prepare you for. The best thing to do is do your job and let it haunt you later. Bill Lagatuda, CBS News, Camp Pendleton, California.
Live at Mogadishu Airport, they have 8 Somalis, spread eagles, on the airport tarmac down there, the Marines do, disarming them. Helicopters were overhead, armored personnel carriers run over a place like ants out of a hill. A lot happening here. We'll have more about it. You'll see and hear more about it after these messages. So stay here with us.
In a 4-wheel drive. Amazing.
I got a big crew and I need a lot of space.
It makes me feel tall.
It's tough but refined. Kind of like me.
It's got it all.
Why do more people find themselves in a Ford Explorer than any other vehicle in its class? For as many reasons as there are explorers.
Finders keepers.
Find yourself in an Explorer.
Have you driven a Ford lately?
Sweet, succulent, sun-sweet, pleasantly pitted prunes. Sweet, sun-sweet, succulent. Sweet, succulent, sun-sweet, pleasantly pitted prunes. They're so much easier to eat. Can we try it again? Keep going.
The Remington microscreen shaves as close as a blade or your money back. Flexible screens let you shave below skin level. The Remington microscreen. Ladies, shave in or out of the shower. The Lady Remington Wet Dry.
We're going to take you someplace outside of Mogadishu now. That's because while the world now knows what a volatile and violent place this capital city is, there is below here, would you believe it, a town that is even more volatile and violent. It's at the southern corner of the Triangle of Death where the suffering is worst. You don't hear much about it, partly because journalists seldom travel there. The town is Kismayo.
It is Somalia's second largest city and a city without mercy. Practically no relief shipments are allowed in by the local gunmen, either by sea or by air.
Every day, literally between October and November, we had problems with flights. We had intimidation. We had, in fact, our UNICEF plane robbed at gunpoint. We had money stolen from our planes.
They were looted?
Oh, yeah, by airport security.
We're driving in now from the Kismayo airport. We were told to keep our profile very low at the airport itself. So many airplanes have been looted there. So many people have had trouble. The airport virtually deserted. Now we're on the road rolling into town itself.
Kismayo's top clan boss is Colonel Omar Jess. He's annoyed today because he has not been consulted about the American military intervention. He suspects the U.S. and certainly the UN are plotting once again to bring Somalia under foreign rule.
I will never accept to be colonized again. And I don't see it a solution to my people that, a certain group comes and dictate to them and make them, a colony. We believe that's not the solution. We will fight anybody who wants to colonize us. We want to be independent and free. We will not accept to be colonized by anybody.
Colonel Jess took us on a tour of Kismayo's port, built with U.S. aid in the 1960s. Shiploads of cigarettes, diesel fuel, and sugar managed to pass through here, but no food relief ships have docked for the last 2 months. The colonel says that's not his fault.
So I want to make sure I understand. You have not kept food out of this port?
Never. It never happened.
And you didn't loot ships in this port?
We never looted ships, and we never prohibited ships to anchor here in our ports. And we don't know why it was, this propaganda was made by some people, but it never happened.
The colonel's motorcade features a truck topped with a rocket launcher from an old Soviet MiG-23. It's a relic of Somalia's past as a pawn in the Cold War.
Colonel, this is Kat from Kenya?
Yes, this is from Kenya. Sort of drug.
Do you use cat?
Yeah.
Do you use cat?
Sometimes. When we want to work a lot of time.
It's not illegal?
It is not illegal.
I have heard people tell me that when the American troops come, they must be very careful in the afternoon because many people chew on cat and maybe get reckless.
No, it is not like whiskey.
This is a UNICEF feeding camp in Kismayo. One of 4 UNICEF operates here. With other agencies, there are 10 overall such feeding camps in the town. When we first arrived, by the way, a cheer went up. Couldn't quite figure it out. We were told they thought you were the arriving Americans. Now we've come into a refugee camp, something different than a feeding station. There are 57 of these refugee camps around. Most of them, filled with people of Bantu heritage. The Bantu tribe has no warlord. It has no patron. These people have been absolutely ravaged for a very long time. They're eager to see the American forces in hopes that means they're going to get back up into their valley where they feel now there's no safety, no hope, and no mercy. They're hoping to get back up in there so they can return to what was their lives.
On the whole, the feeling of the people is that they want American troops. They're tired. They're tired of fighting, and there's a general feeling of optimism for the troops to come in, and they hope that that will give them the security to go home.
Tomorrow's big television show and all-play media circus in Mogadishu may mask a harsher reality, and that is things figure to get more complicated and more dangerous once the troops move out into the countryside, particularly when they move into the Triangle of Death. The key corner of that triangle is the southern port of Kismayu.
Naphtha can be replaced with a non-flammable solvent?
In 1929, she was the only woman and the only PhD chemist in the physics lab. But over the years, she was responsible for 29 different patents.
Hello, I'm Sylvia Stacer.
Dr. Stacer created a new career path for women and for her company. The same company that leads the nation in patents granted to women over the last decade. We think Dr. Stacer would be pleased.
Thou lets you do great things.
With steadfast stare, the people cry, brave future, new world, time that goes by, to tell us the feel, the fabric of our lives, the touch, the feel of cotton, the fabric of our lives.
I was worried that I needed surgery for my hemorrhoids, but my doctor said they weren't serious, and it's time I used Preparation H.
Preparation H cream helps shrink swelling of inflamed hemorrhoidal tissues and often relieves pain, itching, and burning for hours. Doctor recommended Preparation H.
These vegetables are about to be perfectly steamed, like food has never been steamed before, in the Black & Decker Handy Steamer. Because deliciously steamed food requires perfect timing.
All they want is your car, if you're lucky.
There was a gun right in my face.
Steal that car. An all-new 48 Hours Wednesday.
We have a lot more coverage from Somalia for you, but right now, let's go to New York for some other news. And Connie Chung. Connie?
Thank you, Dan. In Washington today, President-elect Clinton said he hopes U.S. troops can be out of Somalia as soon as possible. He again expressed his support for the mission, but said President Bush is calling the shots.
I was not asked to help in making this decision, and it would not have been appropriate, I don't believe, for me to be asked. George Bush is the President of the United States. And Senator Gore and I were briefed, and I think we were briefed thoroughly and very well. And I have made clear that this is a direction that I support, and I do. In terms of what we might do with military forces in the future, I think it would be inappropriate for me to say, except that I wouldn't rule it out.
On the economy, Governor Clinton said there is no hard evidence the recession is over, and a strong recovery, he said, is no sure bet. So the president-elect said he sees no reason to change the programs he advocated during the campaign to stimulate the economy. The Campbell Soup Company is recalling 3 kinds of canned chicken soup and 4 kinds of Swanson frozen dinners. They may contain small pieces of glass. The Campbell Soups and Swanson dinners were sold in at least 33 states. If you need more information, you can call toll-free 1-800-535-4555. That's 1-800-535-4555. The American Medical Association has voted to change its stand on a controversial business practice used by many doctors. The AMA's policymaking delegates now say it is unethical in most cases for a doctor to send a patient for tests at a clinic owned by the doctor. According to the AMA, these so-called self-referrals could be used to order expensive and unnecessary tests. A huge fire broke out overnight at a candle factory in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Besides fighting the flames, authorities were concerned about toxic fumes, so they evacuated nearly 400 people from the neighborhood for several hours. No word yet on the cause of that fire in Oshkosh. Ever since Panamanian leader Manuel Noriega was ousted by U.S. forces and tried in Florida on drug trafficking charges, he's claimed he's a prisoner of war. Today, a federal judge in Miami agreed with him, but the judge also ruled that as long as Noriega is treated in accordance with the Geneva Convention, he may be held in a U.S. civilian prison to serve his 40-year sentence. Overseas, India's prime minister ordered troops to shoot rioters on sight after a second day of violence between Hindus and Muslims. The death toll has now passed 400. A new wave of rioting began today after troops arrested leaders of a radical Hindu party The rioting is spread to predominantly Muslim Pakistan, where at least 26 Hindus were killed. The trouble began Sunday when Hindu militants demolished an Indian mosque. And that's the latest from here. Dan Rather will be back in a moment with more from Somalia.
I recommend Isotoner Lady Slippers. Now this is an angle to get some good footage. So start the season out on the right foot.
Isotoner Slippers.
Here's a great big idea. From Presto, professional salad shooter slicer shredder. Big capacity and power. Special blades to point and slice thick, slice thin, shred, even ripple cut. Right where you want. From Presto.
Pain like this could mean you have sensitive teeth. Here's a remarkable solution. Introducing Aquafresh Sensitive. It targets the cause of the pain. Microscopic holes that let hot and cold shoot straight to the nerve. Aquafresh Sensitive soothes the nerve and helps stop the pain. And with fluoride and that great Aquafresh taste, it can replace your everyday toothpaste, so you may never have sensitive teeth pain again. New Aquafresh Sensitive soothes the nerve, helps stop the pain.
No one has to tell you that doing business today is more challenging than ever. But all over the world, one company is helping you meet those challenges head on, no matter what it takes. New challenges, new thinking.
The mission begins. Operation Restore Hope moves in relief for desperate Somalia. Dan Rather and Dr. Bob Arnott report live tomorrow on CBS This Morning.
The American involvement here is a last-ditch effort to try to save a society that has lasted for thousands of years. It's a society based mostly on peasants and nomads, making their living on the land, off the land, and with the values of the land. CBS News correspondent Dr. Bob Arnott has a report tonight from the countryside.
The American invasion is the last hope for villagers of Dansuro. Deynabo Mohammed has lived here 80 years.
What have been the most difficult years here in Somalia for her?
Sanatkan.
This year.
Life in rural Somalia is little different than it was in the 5th century before Christ. Shepherds herd cattle down the thin green strip of land that follows the riverbed. Most can't afford to slaughter cattle for themselves, but drive them to market for sale. These villages exist on a simple diet of beans and stone-ground rice. The rice you see here was bought from looters who stole it from a relief agency. This little boy's belly is full of parasites, not food. He exists on these stems. Ironically, even though 100 generations have survived drought and famine on the hard land of Somalia, nothing prepared them for modern civil war.
This village has dozens of these holes in the ground. Each one of them once contained 30 100-kilogram bags of either corn or sorghum. Now that was enough to feed a village like this for at least a year. But 5 months ago, all of this food was stolen. Since that time, 50 adults and 39 children have died of starvation.
The looters killed 15 villagers the night they robbed Dansuro of its future. Now, nearly all the village lies here in this cemetery. Only 10 adults remain. Deynabo Mohammed and her grandchild are running out of time. They aren't looking for an American handout. They want seeds and an end to the terror, to return to the only way of life they've ever known. Dr. Bob Arnott, CBS News, Dansuro.
A recent university study confirms something that has millions of asthma sufferers breathing easier. Clinical tests showed Primatene tablets help keep asthma sufferers breathing freely for hours. Primatene tablets, with the asthma reliever doctors recommend.
There's something about Anacin you probably don't know.
Anacin is such a strong pain reliever, headache sufferers find Anacin more effective than regular strength aspirin against stubborn headache pain. Rediscover Anacin for stubborn headache pain.
It's time for Lobster Fest.
Oh, I can't wait to tell you the news. You know all that seafood you love at Red Lobster? Well, we've just lowered our prices. Our new menu has 15 dinners from $6.95 to $9.95. Like our shrimp sampler, just $7.95. With sizzling scampi, flame grilled shrimp, fried shrimp, and all the extras. How's everything?
Delicious.
You know, with our delicious seafood and new lower prices, you're going to love Red Lobster even more. See you soon.
It's the design of the instrument panel, the richness of the finish, the turn of a wheel, the safety of a loved one. It's the way your car or truck makes you feel. For us, our commitment to quality is an obsession.
And it's paying off. 5 of the 10 best-selling vehicles in America are built by Ford Motor Company.
Ford Motor Company, quality is job one. It's working.
This man's incredibly close, comfortable shave comes from the Norelco razor. But to see how he got it, we must go back to when he began shaving. Not just above the skin, but below it. Here, our lift and cut system lifts the hair so when it's cut, it can drop below skin level without the blades touching your face. Try it, and you'll keep going back to Norelco for a perfect shave. Norelco, we make close comfortable.
Take a good look. You've never seen this before on television, and you may never again. The sunrise at Mogadishu Airport in Somalia. The sunrise of gray, purple mixed with a little mauve, now some meat red mixing in as the Marines secure this airport. Now, let me roll a little videotape and show you what happened right down here a few minutes ago. You had 100 cameras at least, 35 Marines, and 9 Somalis spread-eagled on the airport tarmac. They'd been disarmed. One of the young Marines, when one of the Somalis tried to get up, said, stop. You move, you die. He stopped. Now, a little bit later on, the United States Marine commander here, General Johnston, came over with a Pakistani officer to take a look. What they did was get the prisoners up off the ground, and then they took them over into the darkness over this side. What's happened to them, I don't know. Helicopters were, motherships are offshore, Marine armored vehicles are running up and down the runway. The thought occurs that, like Lebanon 10 years ago, Somalia is now a deadly mix of chaos and guns, now big guns. U.S. Marines landed in Beirut on a tide of high expectations from a people exhausted by a civil war, and similar hopes are building now in Somalia, with the people hoping that Americans can somehow end their agony and their anarchy. Here, as in Lebanon so long ago, those expectations can prove to be a danger. CBS News will continue to cover this story step by step with special reports throughout our primetime evening, and then a CBS News special report live from here in Somalia just after your late local news, wherever you are. Dan Rather for the CBS Evening News, live from Mogadishu Airport in Somalia. I'll see you again soon.
Experience CBS News. This is